All right, well, I think we can go ahead and get started then. Let me just pull up my screen. So I just have a few slides to run through to give some folks some context for the challenge, and then we'll pass it off to Demetri to introduce himself and his company, and we'll kind of do a little bit of a guided discussion, asking him some questions around what the challenge was like for him, sort of what he got out of it, and then we'll open it up to your guys' questions, and we can maybe start with questions that will be posed directly to Demetri, and then we can move on. If you guys have more general questions, I'm happy to stay on as well later in the call to answer them. So I'm going to go ahead and share, see what we got. Okay. Can you guys see my screen? Nice. All right. Well, welcome everyone to the first info session for the 2025 Nucleate Alnylam BioVenture Challenge. The BioVenture Challenge is a one-day partnering event that will be held at Alnylam's headquarters on the 20th of November. And the winning team will get a $100,000 non-dilutive grant, as well as there's a great opportunity, even if you don't win the prize, the opportunity to come to Alnylam's HQ to engage with their top executive leadership and scientists, and really develop a mentorship relationship with these folks that can be very useful and transformative for your business development activities as you move forward with your startup project. The deadline for the challenge is October 17th, so it's coming right up, and luckily the application is really simple. So what is the BioVenture Challenge? As I mentioned, this is just a nice little picture from year one of the challenge. It is a one-day event at Alnylam's headquarters in Cambridge, where 7 teams will have the chance to connect with senior leadership and present their science. All expenses will be covered for the trip, including the flight if you have to fly in, as well as lodging. There will be a $100,000 non-dilutive prize that will be given to the winner of the competition. There are no strings or conditions attached with this prize money. There's no rights to your IP. There's no equity taken in the company. It is a non-dilutive grant. The teams that are able to come to the event will also gain access to Alnylam's network of scientific and business expertise. So there are 3 tracks for the BioVenture Challenge this year. The first is next generation genetic medicines. So this would be technologies that are synergistic or competitive with current RNAi approaches, including gene therapy, ASOs, really anything in that genetic medicine space. The wilder, the crazier, the better, probably. And then we've got novel delivery systems. Obviously, delivery for genetic medicines is a huge challenge. The track around delivery is really looking to identify technologies that can help really expand delivery beyond the liver, or significantly improve on existing methods. And then there is a third category, which is target discovery innovation. At the end of the day, the science and the drugs that we create are only as good as the target. And there's a lot of great work being done right now, the convergence of large data sets, AI, all sorts of new approaches to identify better and novel targets. So these projects could look like target discovery engines or technologies to bolster target identification from human genetic data or existing data sets. Who is eligible and how do you apply? So any technology at any stage with application to those tracks listed is eligible. The application is very simple. It's very similar to our activator application or the Lilly Grant Challenge application. If you applied for that program, you can feel free to reuse your previous application materials. There is no affiliation with Nucleate necessary to apply. So tell your friends, even if they weren't part of an activator cohort or a Nucleate program. Teams must include at least one current graduate student, postdoc, or equivalent trainee to be considered and must be prepared to incorporate a company to receive the funding. What's the catch? People always ask us every time, what's the catch? There is no catch. The materials that you submit are non-confidential. Alnylam gets no right to any IP that you have now or in the future. All expenses are paid for the trip, and the $100,000 grant comes with no conditions and is transferred from Nucleate. So the only thing that we ask on the Nucleate end is obviously for your bank account, routing number, tax info, and that you give us a 12-month sort of very short written progress update, 1 or 2 pages, just kind of outlining what you use the funding for. There are no restrictions on what you can use the funding for, as long as it's furthering the business development of your company. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Demetri Maxim. He is a Nucleate Activator alumni and the co-founder and CEO of Nephrogen, and he was the recipient of the BioVenture Challenge in 2023. So welcome, Demetri. I will stop sharing my screen, and maybe you can just start with a quick introduction about yourself and about your company.
Yeah, Oliver, thank you so much for having me. and really happy to share our experience with the rest of the group. But so I'm the founder of Nephrogen. We're a gene therapy company focused on kidney diseases, and so we applied to the Alnylam Challenge about like a year into our company. So we were in the Nucleate program. We went through the screening process, and fortunately, we're selected. At that time, it was three teams, so we went in person in Cambridge, and they changed it my year. So the very first year, who you hear about in the next info session, was at a different setup. But when we did it, they had like a full day of like talks from like senior Alnylam leadership. So like the head of IP at Alnylam came to talk to us, the head of DEI, the head of corporate responsibility, like really significant senior execs came and like offered us an hour of time. They were like there for questions. So I think that was actually like, I mean, again, you're a little stressed because the pitch is at the end of the day. But that being said, like regardless of what happens at the pitch results, like, and again, it's easy for me to say that now, but I think I'm just putting myself like the way I was feeling that morning. Like we did get a lot out of that, and we wrote down like, okay, we'll follow up with this person, we'll follow up with that person, and we ended up just getting a lot of information from really senior people in biotech through this competition. Obviously, then the funding came, and then we followed up with them, and I can talk about that a little bit of like we ended up having several scientific conversations with their CSO, John Maraganore, who our prize was named after, introduced us to the CSO, who then introduced us to LNP specific people because we're working on like an LNP delivery project in kidney. And we had several conversations with them. We didn't end up doing like a larger partnership yet, but we've kind of been like, okay, well, this is where the science is now. If it goes in this direction, we'll reconnect. So I don't know. I just think Alnylam's a really great company. First of all, the fact that they do this and support Nucleate is really awesome to see. And I just think it's just applying and even just being selected as one of the seven is amazing. Again, I don't know if there's anything else before that this year that will be helpful, but if you get into that seven and even just participating would be really awesome. And we got a ton out of it.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, I love to hear that. And I think that's a theme that we hear every year from people that participate in these challenges, whether it's the Alnylam one or the Lilly one. People do say, time and time again, it's really the value of that exposure to the senior leadership that's at the event that is, the most valuable thing. And of course, we're all competitive. We all want to win the prize. And obviously, the money doesn't hurt at all. But I do really think the main value of being selected to attend one of these competitions is really the time that you get to spend with those top sort of senior leaders at the pharma company of interest. And really maintaining that connection can be very valuable for you as you move forward. So maybe Dimitri, you could talk a little bit about the actual pitch itself, kind of what was the setup, how is it judged, who was there in the room, and also a little bit maybe about the Q&A.
Yeah, so the judging is really intense because I think it's basically every like C-suite executive or more or less at Alnylam. Like the CSO was there, John was the former CEO, I think. Oh, so the current CEO wasn't there, but John, who was just left at CEO, was there. The CSO, the head of IP, I believe, the head of human resources. It's like the top of the top executives on Alnylam. Like they're taking their time for several hours to do this. It's really remarkable. So I think like the questions that they're going to ask are like one really good. I think like if you can write down every question that they ask, it's probably going to come up again in another pharma conversation or a VC. So we try to do that again. Like it's stressful. You're in the middle of a pitch, but like as soon as our pitch ended, we try to do that to really get the most out of it. But everything they ask is really spans their expertise. So like the HR person will ask you like, how are you gonna, build a diverse team, right? Or how are you gonna, work with like multi sites because my co-founder's in California and I'm in New York. Like, how are you gonna manage that, right? So like they ask these really kind of hard questions, I would say. And then on the science side, the CSO is obviously asking like, how are you going to commercialize this? Have you thought about manufacturing? So it's really high level questions. So to prep for it, I really just would say know your science inside and out, right? And be honest about where it is, right? They understand that it's a pitch competition. It's not going to be fully fleshed out, but just have a sense of what the visions are coming up and then where your science is to begin with. And just be honest about those two things, I think is really critical because they're going to know and they're going to see when you start talking in the Q&A, the difference.
Totally. Yeah, I can definitely confirm. It is pretty much the entire C-suite of the company, and they do ask really hard questions, especially if you're working in that in one of the spaces that they have a lot of expertise in. So yeah, maybe a little bit about sort of your advice, Dimitri, for people that might be selected, how to sort of make the most of it. You mentioned there's a lot of things going on throughout the day, leading up to the pitch. When you were there, how did you kind of maximize your engagement with the people around the table and then after the event? what did sort of the follow-up kind of look like?
Yeah, I think the main thing is to use it like a targeted networking event, in the sense that you should be really specific about who you're gonna, like you're specific about your ask, right? Because obviously they're bringing really high profile people there, and so you can follow up with all of them afterwards. But if you do follow up with them, it should be with very specific asks of like, oh, I wanted to understand the IP thing you said in your presentation, or this is our IP. Do you have 5 minutes? Because they're just really busy, right? And so I think for us, like, it just took very short emails and very targeted things to get the most out of the follow-ups in the actual in-person event. Some of them actually have to go right after their talk, so it depends. But like the ones that are around for Q&A, the same thing, just be really clear and directed in your questions is obviously the way for them to help you the most. And that was our experience overall.
Brilliant. So I guess when you look back on, what you use the funding for, or I guess maybe in general, can you talk a little bit more about the funding? Sort of what was the process to sort of get the money? I always say no strings attached. I would love to hear your perspective on that for the audience members, because that's probably like the number one question that comes up during the FAQ. And then I guess the last thing would just be sort of how you use that money to advance your company. Can you speak a little bit to the funding?
Yeah, so the funding is fully non-dilutive, right? There's no strings attached. You have to submit a budget to Alnylam/Nucleate to just describe what you're going to spend it on, so they have a sense. So that's still required, but you could spend it on whatever you want. That's going to benefit your company. Obviously, you can't go buy a car or something. I'm sure like that would be, highly illegal, but you're spending it on your company, but like unrestricted within that. I think for the process, so I remember there was like a first round where you had to interview with, present a pitch with Nucleate staff and maybe a couple, I forget exactly the first step selection, and then to actually get to the final seven. It's really just the pitch, right? I think you submit your pre-slides beforehand, so they all have a sense of like what you're gonna show, and then you get on stage and then they decide, right? It's not a ton of stuff that goes into that. So, and then once you have the funds, it's non-dilutive. And I don't believe there's any, I think you just have to basically say this is what I spent it on, and show that at the end, and then yeah, that's pretty much the whole process. But I think that's really a huge benefit of this pitch is that as an early stage company, like if you get an NIH grant, it's like restricted to specific categories. Whereas here, like you really can use it for whatever you want. You want to use it for IP filings, you want to use it for science, renting a lab, hiring a scientist. It really is flexible in that way, which is great.
Great. And can you tell us a little bit about sort of what you use the funding for?
So we primarily used it to hire another scientist. So we had two people, one scientist, myself, and my co-founder at the time. We hired someone else. It ended up being in 2024 because it took some time for the grant actually to get awarded right after the competition. So we ended up hiring another scientist and paid most of their salary. We fortunately got a golden ticket at the same time, so we moved into a lab space that we didn't have to pay for, which was really nice. So we didn't need to use it for that, but it was mainly just hiring the scientist, and that scientist has been phenomenal. We've had him for over a year and a half. We've now raised other funding to keep them on because obviously the 100K runs out after a little over a year. But it was really amazing to have that at that time in the company because early stage financing right now is tough, right? Getting money as a preclinical biotech is definitely not easy. The number of seed rounds happening is down. Pharmas are partnering a little bit later. I mean, they are doing some early stage deals, but this is a really great way to fund us. And for us, 100K was a lot of money and really got us. I mean, it didn't fund our NHP study, but it basically got us, a major package of data that's now allowed us to de-risk a lot of things as a company.
Yeah, no, I fully hear you. It can be difficult out there. And I think, one of the things that we think about a lot at Nucleate is how we can support, that community of early stage innovators. These are the folks, everyone on this call, you're working on really important science. That top of funnel innovation is so important to preserve, in order to get the sort of outcome that we want to see in terms of benefits to society for actually translating that research into transformative medicines. So, please do, in addition to this challenge, take a look at the other programs that Nucleate offers, which are all completely free, including the Activator program, which actually is open right now and also closes around the same time in late October, because it's a great way to get connected with sort of resources, mentorship, and potentially funding that otherwise would be really hard to come by. And you don't lose anything by taking a shot and filling out the application, for this challenge or for the Activator. So actually, on that note, just transitioning very briefly, Demetri, could you talk a little bit about kind of your journey through Nucleate's ecosystem, starting with the activator and then the other challenges that you may have participated in addition to the Alnylam one?
Yeah, so we started. Maybe I'll tell my original origin story. Michael Retchen and I did a high school science fair together in 2015,
Deep
and so I
cut.
saw
I love it.
so I saw that he had this like program called Nucleate, which at the time was like this tiny little, program that I knew nothing about. And he was advertising for it on LinkedIn. And I first saw the email, to be honest. I was like, like another accelerator, like, no funding involved. Like, I just kind of like ignored it, to be honest. And then he messaged me on LinkedIn and was like, "Hey, Demetri, I saw you're in New York, like you're building a biotech company. Like there's this program called Nucleate. You should try it." I was like, well, like it does seem a little bit earlier than where we are as a company. But basically, I was like, okay, whatever, I'll apply. So I applied. I missed one of the info sessions as well because I was traveling. So then, like, I really didn't have any info at all. And then we got into the, matching process, and I was like, oh wow, these like we're meeting like really amazing people in biotech in New York. Like, how do they get all these people to come to this? Similar to Alnylam, right? It was like C-level people or very high-level people at the Nucleate events. And so then I was like, huh, like this is a cool program. But again, this was in 2022. So now Nucleate is this like global powerhouse funding biotechs all over the world, and multiple unicorns are probably going to come out of it if they haven't already. So I think, but at the time it was a very early stage thing. And then, like I remember, we went to our first mentor session at the beginning of the activator. Fortunately, that we got accepted. We made a team. And then yeah, we went to the first session. I remember the first mentor group that I was paired with was like all like again like the like chief development officer at Forge Biologics, which is like the AAV manufacturing company that was like paired with us for a regulatory session. I was like, how do they find these people to like give time to like, these like college kids basically. I mean, I just started grad school, but like it was really fascinating. So overall, I think Nucleate was a great way. And then it turned out that there was a lot of funding that came with Nucleate. They connected you with VCs. They set up you on a pitch track, right? There's money that you get if you win the pitch in your area. They have sponsors for that. They've grown the Alnylam competition. They've done Pillar awards and Blue. There's another firm as well. So like yeah, it's far exceeded. It's been the best accelerator we've done. We've done a lot of different ones. We did Y Combinator, which is a very well-known one, which was great for fundraising as well. But I think the overall benefit we got because it was specific tailored for biotech from Nucleate was phenomenal. We've applied to everything all the time. We applied to the Lilly one. We've gotten into some. We haven't gotten into others. But yeah, I think we've been really fortunate to win the competitions we've had offered by Nucleate, including the Bayer competition as well for the collab. Well, it's a collab catalyst award, but it's at Lab Central, so it's also funded us for a golden ticket. So yeah, again, I can't really say enough about Nucleate. I think for starting with the activator is really important because it opens up all these other things. But then now, these programs aren't even restricted to activator alums. So, yeah, we're really grateful for Michael's email and LinkedIn message way back in 22. And yeah, I met Oliver in person shortly after that, just in the church lab in Boston, and it's been all uphill from there. So thank you.
Very kind words. Yeah, I'm grateful for Michael Retchen every day of my life. So I empathize with that perspective. So maybe now I'm happy to open it up to questions from the audience. If folks have a question for Demetri, you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask it, or you could put it in the chat. And just to answer the first question in the chat, there will be a recording of this session. It will go out on YouTube, and I'll link it in the link tree for Alnylam as well as our newsletter. So any questions for Demetri?
Maybe I'll kick it off with one. Dimitri, it'd be helpful to know what stage was your company at when you applied to this challenge, and sort of were you pre-data? Was it just an idea on paper, or did you have data from your graduate school work? Like, what was sort of the stage of the company, the team? I think that'd be helpful to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, so we were probably a year into like started in September 2022 and the challenge was November 2023. So we were very early. We had some early proof of concept data showing targeting to kidney cells, but we didn't have anything beyond that. We didn't have a development candidate, anything near that. We didn't have proof of concept in vivo data. Yeah, we had in vitro data. We didn't have large animal. It was definitely a very early stage. We were 1 year in. We had a single employee. We were doing some science, and that was about it.
Yeah, and just to I guess like piggyback on that for a second, you don't need to apply with an incorporated company. You can apply for this challenge if you're unincorporated. However, to receive the funding, you need to be incorporated, and we'll only hold the money for up to a year. So the idea would be, if you're unincorporated but you expect to incorporate in the next 6 to 8 months, that would be, kind of a sweet spot for you to apply on just the company formation side. To Dimitri's point, you don't need to have robust, in vivo proof of concept data. You do need to have data. It can't be like napkin, a napkin idea. But it doesn't need to be very far down the pipeline. To answer one of the other questions, do we have to have a graduate student team? Yes. Alnylam is really excited to support for this challenge, kind of, science that's coming out of great labs and is great science, but they want to see sort of an academic trainee really be front and center in the company, right? Doesn't mean that they have to be necessarily the CEO or the CSO, but they have to be involved, and they would prefer for the person that actually comes to represent the company to be sort of an active graduate student postdoc, sort of working on the technology at the company, or have been a graduate student postdoc founder that is now working full time at the company, because they want to see kind of a direct. They really want to support sort of that next generation, I guess is the way to put it. Okay, what was your modality of therapeutics? Had you already decided at the time of the application? So that one's for you, Demetri.
Yeah, so we knew our modality. I mean, we were a gene therapy company. I guess we do have a platform play where we're making new AAV capsids that are targeted, I guess, for any tissue, but we'd already decided definitely broadly on gene therapy and then AAV and then kidney. So we were pretty specific at the time. But I don't know if that's true. I think like they might evaluate platform technologies that haven't decided on an indication, but I think even a platform technology, you probably have to know the modality, whether it's RNA or small molecule or whatever the platform is designed to do. I would assume you probably have to have some sense of that when you apply.
Yep. I guess unless you're in that target discovery bucket, which is a new one, there might be a little bit more of a tolerance for having really robust data around a target, but not knowing necessarily what would be the best modality to go after for sort of a clinical candidate. How did you address the question of you and your co-founder being in different locations?
I think we just clarified our roles really honestly. So I'm the CEO, I'm full-time, I'm out of grad school. At the time of the competition, I mean, I finished shortly before that, but basically I was running the company and he was a chief medical officer. So for right now, we're not a clinical stage company. So we needed, someone to do part-time work basically. And so even though we co-founded the company together and Vivek is as involved as he can be, he still is a professor at Stanford. And so we just were honest about that and the role that he plays. And I think that hopefully was enough to, you don't want to oversell, I guess, what your team is capable of. And so if you're in the clinic and Vivek was full-time, or part-time, that would not be good, right? So, but we just kind of clarified that we're a preclinical company now. I'm the CEO. We're bringing on a chief scientist. We have another lab tech. This is kind of our overall strategy that fits within, what's reasonable for a preclinical company. I think they were okay with that.
Great. Let's see, could you give us the main selection? Oh, wait, sorry. I understand there's major technical risks involved, but how did you prepare for the market business risk? It's a question from James.
Market business risk. So trying to think. Oh yeah. So they asked about so gene therapy, you have like this really big, if you're treating everybody that has a disease, right? You're treating the prevalent population, and then that shrinks to this like the incident population. So that's the new patients that are diagnosed every year. So we started by treating basically everybody that has kidney disease. And so we had to show this curve that was like, okay, this is what our sales would be in kind of 1 year to five, and then this is what it will trickle down to over a long period of time, following approval. So we had to clarify that like the market size is kind of this two-sided market. And so depending on your market, you just want to go into explain it like as simply as possible, but like what is your market? If you're a platform, like who are you selling to? What are the number of deals? Like what's the commercial viability of this? And then like if you do 5 licensing deals, how is that going to fund your company? Because like it might require a drug approval of the pharmas that you license to for you to get significant revenue. So do you have a plan for making your own drugs? Do you have a plan for selling the data? Like you should just think about all the different like ways people monetize biotech and what your strategy is and be clear and as quantitative as you can of how to do that.
Great. Okay, this is a question from Charles. Could you give us the main selection criteria for the three axes? So selection criteria will be sort of stage of the science. So again, it doesn't need to be super far along clinical nomination DC candidate, but it does need to have data beyond just sort of an idea on a napkin. So we're looking at the stage of the science, we're looking at the quality of the science. We're really looking for differentiated project ideas that are novel and unique, sort of not just a follower, like a Me Too idea. We're looking at impact. So the impact that the engagement with Alnylam and the uh, potential recipient of the award could have on the company. So it's always a good idea to include in your slide deck, the impact, right? If you get this $100,000, how is that going to be transformative for your company? What doors is that going to unlock? What data will you be able to generate that you wouldn't otherwise be able to generate with that funding? Um, and then I guess the last part would just be really looking at the fit within the track, right? So if it's a next generation approach in genetic medicine, depending on what that is, right? How does that stack up against Alnylam's current RNAi approaches? How does it outperform them, or how does it synergize, right? Same thing with target identification. Are there targets that are being generated that are within therapeutic areas of interest for Alnylam? Is the target generation discovery engine differentiated and something that is understandable and not just a bunch of buzzwords about AI, right? Which I think is always a challenge nowadays when you're trying to evaluate different technologies. So those are the basic sort of criteria and qualifications. Does it have to be gene therapy company or targeting cancer therapy qualities as well? It does not have to be a gene therapy company or targeting for cancer therapy. Yeah, so targeting for cancer therapy would qualify. So like if you have a delivery technology that can deliver things to a tumor, that would qualify. May you comment more on the interaction with the mentors? Are they still actively involved after the award? Thanks. Okay, I think that one's for Demetri.
This is the mentor question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I think by mentors they mean just like the people that were involved, I assume. But like so if you're talking about like the people at Elm Island that come and meet with you and then the judges, I think yeah, that is kind of a relationship that you build after, but I wouldn't consider them like they're not like a formal mentor, right? It's just someone that you meet at the competition and then they're able to mentor you or help you out if there's an alignment. So I think we've used the mentors in different ways, and that some of them we've just met one time to talk about IP. Others we've met maybe a couple times. The scientists we've like kind of continually gone back to. So it really depends. But again, I think because they are so high ranking and like busy, I think it's just clear to be like, what is the ask and how can you, like with everything, right? How can you help them? And then, I mean, it's a little different because it's designed to help student entrepreneurs. So they're there to help you for the competition, but you just have to kind of try and meet in the middle if you want to sustain a relationship. Because we found like, Alnylam's interested in RNAi, right? So if they're doing RNAi, then AV like kind of conflicts with that. So then LNPs is the way to go. So if we had LNP data for kidney, like could we work together on an RNAi target? But then there's other companies that are just doing direct ligands. So it became like this long conversation and we learned a lot out of it. They learned a lot. And we kind of, haven't end up progressing it further than that just because we don't have anything scientifically to work on, but they've been very good mentors in the sense that they give us input on the science as we develop the technology, which a lot of pharma companies won't do or just don't have the bandwidth or whatever. So I think that's to get the most out of the mentors. You just want to be clear about the ask and then, follow up as needed, as appropriate.
Yep, 100%. Um, IgM gene therapy idea before going in viruses. Is this okay for applying for the challenge? Depends on what you mean by validation. I guess if it's a straight idea and you have no data at all, then I would not apply. If you have data, like in vitro data even, then that would be enough to apply. I hope that answers that question. Let's see. Any other questions that people have for Demetri? Going once, going twice. All right. Well, thank you so much, Demetri, for joining us. I will stay on for a couple more minutes if people have questions that they would like to ask. as we approach the end of the session. So thank you, Demetri. Talk to you soon, and best of luck.
Yeah, thank you all. Good luck. Thank you all for having me. Take care.
All right, bye-bye. No, if you have proof of concept data in vivo, you're not too far. You can't really be too far. You could be like a clinical stage company and they'd be interested. I think the question most people have is, are you too early? So the answer there is, if you don't have any data, then yes, you're too early. If you have in vitro data, you're not too early. In vivo proof of concept data is probably a sweet spot. And then if you're clinical, that's also great. But I think that in vivo POC is probably the sweet spot for the type of innovation that they're looking for at this moment. Any other questions? Great. All right. Well, we'll close it up then. Thank you all very much. And I will finish by just putting back into the chat the key links here. If you want to apply for the challenge before the 17th of October, you can follow the link tree. If you would like to learn more about Nucleate, there's another link tree that you can take a look at. All the link trees are connected, so you can't really get lost. But yeah, the activator applications also close at the end of October. So apply for both of them if you can. I think they're both fantastic opportunities, especially now in this challenging time that we see for early innovation. So thank you guys. Best of luck to everyone. Stay strong, and I will talk to you later. Thank you.